Well, how we doing? Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up and running. Glad to have you with us here today. Sean Stiers with Jesse Stiers and our old buddy Salty Virginia Peanuts has been in the house waiting for us for a while. He says the Stiers know you got to fight for your right to party. Then he said he just had a hiccup in his lights. Jesse must be warming up his play diagramming system. It's sucking all the power off his grid. I think that's what you've been sitting there doing while we've been waiting to go, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm getting everything kind of loaded up and ready, and gonna give a good kind of overall breakdown of what I think, what we can expect out of BYU offensively, and defensively before I gotta head out for a couple of days of vacation. So looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I see the viewership is a little bit light right now. And, we always get a hard time from regulars in the YouTube chat about not starting on time. And we started as close to 6 o'clock as we have started in a long time. And I'll tell you, when I first started the show, I'll just tell you up front, Driscoll told me that he usually likes to wait a few extra minutes, after 6 o'clock to kind of let the viewership build up, let people get there before we get started, so that's kind of where that came from. And I see more people trickling in right now. So glad to have you with us in the YouTube live tonight. And we've got, as Jesse just kind of teased, the title of this show is Chalk Talk, and Jesse's going to bring in his chalk and his talk to both sides of the ball in this Notre Dame BYU matchup in Vegas. Notre Dame 2-2, of course, coming out of the bye week, heading toward this BYU matchup in the Shamrock Series this weekend. And the Irish, a 3.5-point Vegas favorite going into the Shamrock Series Vegas game against BYU Saturday night. The over-under is 51.5 points. And I tell you what, the last couple of games, I guess, at least you get a little bit better feel, like if you're going to bet on Notre Dame, just in terms of spreads and all that kind of stuff. Those point totals, though, I still don't know. I did not see what was that when it was all said and done. 77 points coming out of that Notre Dame North Carolina game last week. I had it a bit lower than that, but 51.5 seems fairly reasonable for this one this week. You were just telling me that, and I agree after watching BYU in their game against Utah State last Thursday, that they're probably not quite as explosive as North Carolina was coming into the game, but just a lot of similarities between BYU and North Carolina, really.
Yeah, and that was kind of the first thing that I noticed up front is BYU loves to get into 11 personnel offensively. That's exactly what North Carolina was trying to accomplish. And they are, I would say, a better passing team, or maybe a pass-first team, even though their splits break down to about 50%, evenly pass and run. I'd still say that they're more of a passing team. Their chunk of their yards come through the air. But I think the main thing is they run a lot of 11 personnel. They do a lot of similar looks to what North Carolina does. I would just say that the difference between BYU and North Carolina is BYU is trying to develop more downfield, as North Carolina was trying to hit some of those quicker, kind of shorter intermediate pass routes. I think BYU likes to let things build. They're looking to hit kind of, I would say 10-yard pass plays more so than North Carolina. But yeah, it's very similar to what they're trying to accomplish. The run scheme is predominantly the same. It's just that I would say that they're just getting a little bit more depth in their routes. So,
yeah. All right, so we're going to be getting into it tonight. A lot of chalk talk coming up, doing some breaking down of BYU. And again, looking at both sides of this matchup here tonight. Before we do that, though, the quick, friendly reminder: smash that like button if you would. Subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff, whether you're on YouTube or whatever podcast platform that you might happen to be on. So we've got a lot coming up. Jesse's got a lot coming up. He's got his diagrams, his charts ready to go. It is Notre Dame and BYU. Let's start. What do you have loaded up there? Do you have Notre Dame's defense against BYU's offense? Is that the first thing we're going to take a look at tonight?
Actually, I looked at it more of Notre Dame's offense against BYU's defense up front. I think that there's more to kind of unpack that way. I think that defensively, we'll go through a couple of things, but like I said,
Well, hang
predominantly.
on. So I just want to see where we are then. So we're looking at Notre Dame's offense against BYU's defense first, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. You want me to load this up, or you want to kind of give your thoughts before we load this up?
Yeah, I think we'll do a little bit of a background here of
Okay.
kind of some characteristics of BYU's defense, and then we can kind of get into a couple of plays that I think would be advantageous for Notre Dame to get into. So defensively, BYU loves to sit predominantly in a 4-2-5 look, and oftentimes they will actually go with 3 down linemen. And I think Notre Dame really needs to take advantage of when BYU is going to get into 3 down linemen looks. BYU's defense, 342 total plays, 60% have been run, 40% have been pass against the BYU defense. So that already alone kind of shows you what teams and what film shows as their weakness. They're bad against the run. They're a bad run defense. They don't shut down the run very well. Over their 5 games, they've given
Hold
up.
on. Just so I can chime in here real quick to kind of back up statistically what you're saying. They're 93rd in the nation against the run, giving up around 163 yards a game, 4 yards per carry. And, we saw, of course, Notre Dame explode for 287 rushing yards in the win over North Carolina, deducted for a couple of yards for the kneel down at the end. But the Irish are averaging more than 160 per game. And again, BYU is giving up 163 yards per game. So, like, typically when you look at those averages, you expect the if they're fairly similar like that, you expect the rushing offense to probably have more success against that defense, especially when you look. Utah State netted 204 rushing yards against BYU last week. 147 of that came in the first half. BYU kind of limited them a little bit in the second half. Part of that was BYU got a couple quick touchdowns in the second half, and they were playing, with the lead. So Utah State was not necessarily running as much in the second half. But then you look a couple weeks back in BYU's loss to Oregon, their lone loss of the season, they gave up 212 yards in a 41-20 loss, 212 rushing yards. And that was a week after Baylor ran for 152 against them. So it didn't mean to like jump on top of you, but just wanted to kind of, again, back up what you're talking about with just where BYU's rush defense is statistically and kind of what they've done so far.
Yeah, so piggybacking off what you said, they've given up 163 yards per game rushing. They give up about 176 yards per game in the air. So it's a pretty balanced what they're giving up per game rush and pass. But obviously the rush is considerably more than it should be. Like I noted here, poor run defense. They like to press their outside corners. Guys who are on the, I guess you could say the furthest away wide receiver or the sideline wide receiver, if that gives you a better picture. They like to press up their corners on those guys. And like you said, another big note I made, 38-7 against Oregon after 3 quarters in that loss that they took. So, after the third quarter, that game was predominantly over 38-7. And like you said, 212 rushing yards. But, really they lost 22 yards on one play. So I kind of bumped them up to 234. So a big run game. Bo Nix had 3 rushing touchdowns in that game, I believe, or accumulated 3 touchdowns. So the ground game is what's going to beat BYU's defense. And, luckily for Notre Dame, they have a 3-headed running back monster right now that they can use in a variety of ways. So to lead off, I think that's what we should get into first, is kind of, the looks that Notre Dame likes to get into and how I think BYU will line up. And it's really hard. I was talking to you about this before the show. If I'm BYU's defensive coordinator and I looked at 2 or 3 different films, and they're still lining up the same way, I'm hoping for BYU's sake that the defensive coordinator makes some adjustments, because these teams are coming out with, predominantly 6 guys in the box, 6, 7 guys in the box. And BYU will go 6 guys in the box or 5 guys in the box even at times. So they're even getting outnumbered, in the box pre-snap. So I think there's a lot to get into, but if you don't mind sharing the screen,
Let's do it.
We'll kind of get into some looks here right away. What do I want to go with first? So I think this one, the thing I wrote down in my notes, 21 personnel and 11 personnel should dominate BYU's defense, and
Okay.
you'll see why. So I really like just the standard 11 personnel, using your tight end as a wing. So right now we're looking at balls on the left hash, 2 wide receivers into the left boundary, 1 wide receiver off to the right, quarterback in shotgun, halfback split off to the left, and the tight end kind of a wing to the right. So the reason why I like this is because BYU has consistently shown that in 11 personnel, they're only going to go with 3 down linemen, which is very advantageous to a very strong and powerful run game that Notre Dame would like to run. And even off this play alone, base play, there's a lot of things that can be accomplished here. First of all, what I like here is just a simple kind of power play into the field. So the left guard will pull. This right tackle will let go of this defensive end on the end. He'll run up to the linebacker. This pulling guard will reach this linebacker. And then you have Michael Mayer kind of leading up what would be a give or a handoff this way. So you essentially have, 3 guys running out in front of your running back, getting on 2 guys, and then leaving your running back and tight end to kind of combo this safety up here. So
Yeah, so I'll do the radio play-by-play here real quick because you got parts of it, but basically you've got Mayer as the tight end in the 11 personnel lined up as a wing slash halfback type guy on the right side of the formation, and you've got him, as you said, as a lead blocker coming out there. Then you're pulling the left guard out in that same direction, and the right tackle goes up to block a linebacker. The right guard goes up to block a linebacker, and then you've got the running back coming out on that side. So you've got more blockers than they've got defenders really out there because of the fact that they've got 3 down.
Yeah, because they're only going with 3 down linemen. And so that's what I'm saying of like this BYU's defensive alignment here is solely based off of what I've seen on film. Like I'm not just putting these guys in random spots. These are what they're showing on film. And I just, again, if they want to come out in 3 down linemen in this 11 personnel look, Notre Dame should be able to punish them consistently with this power run game, because not only, do they have the numbers advantage, but BYU is poor tackling. BYU is poor, just overall run defense. So when you have a bad run defense and you're already putting yourself at another disadvantage, I think it's a big opportunity that Notre Dame could capitalize on.
All right.
So that takes care of, well, actually, I kind of want to stay in this formation and get the most out of it. So let me kind of undo some things. There's another good play that can be run out of this. Again, 3 down linemen, exact same formation. But this time what I would like to see is you get your left tackle up and seal the boundary side linebacker. Your wing back or tight end comes across formation, and he's leading on the edge.
Or he just jet sweeps like he did against North Carolina.
Right, a jet sweep. But what I'd like here is a quick pitch out to this running back, and he's just getting behind his guys. There's a lot of open space over here to the boundary. And again, your left tackle would reach up and seal this linebacker. Left guard would seal this end over here. And then Mayer is just leading up, essentially leading the entourage, and the halfback is following him up here to what would be, again, you have wide receiver on this DB, wide receiver on this DB. You assume Mayer can lock off this safety, and you have a ton of room to get upfield like that. So again,
or you just put one of the receivers on the other side of the formation, and you run a clear out with the receiver who's on that side of the formation, and you've just got a lot of open room, basically.
Right, and so this is why I guess I'm shocked that BYU is still like lining up to 11 personnel with 3 down linemen, because against a very powerful, dominant, physical, Notre Dame type of team, they're going to get punished that way in 11 personnel. So just a couple things that I liked out of 11 personnel. And then going into 21 personnel, again, another thing that I think would be very advantageous for Notre Dame here. So we're looking again, left left balls on the left hash. We have wide receivers split out on each side. We have 2 running backs in the backfield, and then we have a tight end again as a wing into the left boundary here. But here's a very similar concept to kind of the last play that we showed. And again, you can see right off of the bat here, they have 6 guys. Oops, wrong button. 6 guys. Oh, here we go. I promise it's right this time.
6 guys
people,
floating.
Yeah, 6 guys in the box right here. You would hope maybe that this safety would step down in some respects, and so you might be able to claim 7 people in the box. But still, that is 7 versus 6 or 7 versus 7, and I would take Notre Dame in that situation. But another play I like here is you get your left guard pulling to the right side. You get Mayer coming across the right side. You get this, assuming this might be Estime. You bring Estime over here, and you hand off to either Diggs or Tyree, and they have a 3-man
little convoy in front of them.
Right, a 3-man entourage go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, here's my question, because say they've got the Notre Dame's lined up with this 21, just like you're showing right here, and like you've said that you're lining these BYU guys up based on what you've seen them do against similar packages in their previous games. Do you think that because they're going to be assuming Notre Dame is going to be so focused, so predicated on running the football, would you expect them to drop more guys down in the box from the start?
Yeah, so I that's the main thing I was kind of looking at. If Notre Dame comes out in 21 personnel, I think that this DB has to, in some regards, sink, right? And so this DB would come down, and you get almost more, like a 4-3 look. This safety would rotate over the top here, and then this safety, DB safety, whoever it might be, would also rotate over here, because there's no reason to have 3 guys, to 1 wide receiver over here. But that's going to be the game that BYU is going to have to play, right? Like if they want to bring an extra guy down, okay, then Notre Dame can start leaking in some pass plays behind it. So again, like we saw against North Carolina, I think that, establishing the run game early and then getting these safeties to kind of have to cheat, or these linebackers to kind of have to cheat because you're so worried about the run. You've been hearing about the run all year, that it's not, you can't tell me that they don't know that they're not great against the run, right? Like the defensive coordinator has to constantly be telling them, hey guys, we need to be better and run. And so when they start running and they start bringing more people down here into the box, well, that naturally allows, Notre Dame to get beyond these safeties on play action, kind of like what we saw with Lorenzo Styles. So BYU's got to be very conscious about what their priorities are going to be. So I think going forward, starting off, I think BYU is going to say, we want you to beat us with the pass. So we're going to limit your run. We're going to put more people in the box.
Right.
And then Notre Dame has to find ways to play off of their run and get some of these pass plays open. But like I said, if they stick to 11 personnel, BYU has not shown that they're going to go with 4 down linemen and 11 personnel. So you can spread them out and still kind of get some of those power concepts that we were talking about.
Very interesting. The question that Tyler had, out of the 3 running backs, which one do you think will be more key to victory? And I think that it's hard to say that one is more key than the other, especially the way they used him against North Carolina last week. But I do love the way, or not last week, but almost 2 weeks ago now. But I do love the way that they've kind of used Chris Tyree and his quick burst ability and everything that he brings them. He runs hard every time he touches the football, and his ability to win in space. I like the way that they use him more early on, and obviously we'll still see Logan Diggs probably mixed in, but I love the way they use him early, and then with the running game going the way they want, then you've basically got that closer, that finisher in Audric Estime, just bringing that big diesel heat in the second half and just punishing people. And so, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Do you look at it as Tyree is more important because he's maybe getting some of the early yards, or is Estime the big, more important guy because of the fact that he's finishing things off. So, I don't think that there's necessarily a pat answer to that question. What do you think?
I think that they work best in unison or harmony, complementing each other. So I don't
Yeah.
think that there's any best answer here. I will say that me personally, I like to see Estime run between the tackle box, and I like to see Tyree more getting off the edge and using his speed more off the edge in an open space where he's got a lot of field and kind of some lead blockers to work with. So in regards to that, I would just like them to stick to kind of Estime, short down, big power between the tackle, late in game kind of back, and then Tyree and Diggs as your kind of, outside perimeter guys, spreading the offense out a little, or sorry, spreading the defense out a little bit and using their speed off the edge more so.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at what they're doing right now, Estime for the season is averaging 4.9 per carry, and Tyree has his yards per carry up to 4.6. Diggs is still in that 3.1, but most of that comes from early in the season when he wasn't quite as effective before they really, kind of switched up with what they're doing offensively. He obviously didn't play in the Cal game, so it's most of that was from what he did in the Ohio State and the Marshall games, and then he was more a factor as a receiver again with that two-back set, whether it was 21 or 22 in the win over North Carolina. So just a difference in how they're using them, but they complement each other so well. If you're using two of the three at any given time, they just complement each other very well. All right. So did you switch to the defensive side of the ball now?
No, not quite yet.
Okay, we're
There
sticking with
is,
offense. Okay,
yeah, there's
cool.
another kind of thing. I liked what I saw Utah State do against BYU, and
Okay.
it's very much reminiscent of what Notre Dame's trying to accomplish, and why I like it so much is for that reason. So immediately pre-snap, Utah State, and by the way, that Utah State game, Utah State played them very well,
They
and
did.
minus, they threw a pick six on I think like their second possession or third possession. It gave BYU kind of a cushion early on, and I don't think obviously by BYU won, but I think that game is even more uncomfortable for BYU if they don't get that early pick six in that game. So I think that that's something that needs to be factored in. And I think something that Drew Pine has done good as of recently is just, playing safe football. Don't give BYU any more extra points or
Yeah.
opportunities or those kind of situations. But I digress. We're going to get into another play here. So immediately, Utah State, again, okay, I probably should lay out the formation. We are on the left hash, two wide receivers into the boundary, running back into the boundary, tight end wing on the right on the field side, and then a wide receiver split out just beyond the hash on the
And this
field
is a
side.
play that Utah State ran against them.
Yeah, and it's very similar to
Okay.
Notre Dame's kind of
Okay.
offense. So immediately the far side boundary wide receiver will come into motion pre-snap, and I think why I like this so much, if I remember right, is let me get to edit formation. This safety here and this, this corner, they did a bad job of rolling the coverage. Like this guy kind of stuck out through here when the ball was snapped, and the safety kind of was still stuck over the middle of the field. But getting back here into the play, they send this guy into motion, they hike the ball, and then there's two options here. They either hand the ball off, and let all of these guys get around the corner, kind of like what we were showing recently, and kind of lead up, as lead blockers. Or what Notre Dame likes to do, and what builds a lot of their plays here, is you fake this handoff, you leak this guy, kind of on like a maybe a 5-yard flood route, and you can get Mayer underneath that, or you can give them the option of, an out or a streak kind of right up here, right? Because then you're putting this defensive back into a bind, which can potentially lead to Mayer one-on-one with this safety as he's rolling over late. And I think that's a good matchup that Notre Dame can get into. And again, it's a lot of what their offense is about, right? Motioning this guy, getting this easy kind of pass into the flat right off the bat. And this kind of plays off of what we were talking about yesterday, and why pre-snap motion is so important in Notre Dame's offense is because immediately you can see what these defensive backs are doing in their coverage. Are they rolling it? Are they staying in man? And at the same time, you're creating a lot of confusion, and you can get a favorable matchup, kind of what we were talking about here with Mayer, with these guys rolling over late. You can get him up the seam if you want on a one-on-one matchup, giving him that option, or you can, simply run the out here and have an option route and make this defensive back have to come down and beat you to the ball. So again, another concept that I like based off of, similar things that Notre Dame has done and some of the things that Utah State had success with against BYU.
Yeah, you've got a request. We Are Not Marshall wants you to drop the Statue of Liberty, if you would. I'm pretty sure he's just joking. But Brent said that, by the way, he said Pine would pass for 300 yards, got damn near close with 289. You were right, but close does not win you anything if you're talking about Vegas. So, but he did have a really good game, career high for him. And, did you have anything more then that you wanted to add, Jess, on Notre Dame's offense?
I think that wraps it up offensively. So if we
Okay.
want to shift gears to defense, I am more than willing to do that. I'm afraid that like I kind of opened with here, North Carolina's offense is very similar to BYU's offense. So I think we'll see a lot of similar things, from the defense. And I can kind of go through what I think would work best.
I just wanted to start with this. BYU's offense, like to kind of put it into perspective, North Carolina's offense was averaging 310 passing yards a game going into that game against Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago. BYU's averaging 293. They're rushing for 152. They're throwing for 293. And then you compare that, like what Brent just said there, that Pine passed for 289. That's a season best for him. And, in the meantime, BYU is averaging 293, so obviously a pretty big difference in the modes of operation for these two teams offensively.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going through the BYU offense breakdown, you hit a couple of those points. They love 11 personnel. They've run 330 total plays, 53% pass, 47% run. So, pretty balanced out in those regards. They're giving up, like you said, they're rushing for about 150 yards a game. What I noticed is that 314 of those, their chunk came against South Florida in their first game. So I kind of took that big chunk out. And if you take out that chunk, they're only averaging about 112 yards a game. So I know it's not, you can't just take away a big game like that, but, big first game of the season, kind of maybe poor opponent, they ran for 300 yards, big run game. But since that South Florida game, they're only averaging just over 100 yards a game. And then, like you said, they're averaging 293 pass yards a game. They've thrown for 13 touchdowns. That equates to about 2.5 passing touchdowns per game. They're not. I know that they have good running numbers, but in my opinion, they're not a good run team. I don't think that they're definitely not a run first team. Against Utah State, I consistently saw their offensive linemen getting blown off the ball. Like their heels, are a yard and a half behind the line of scrimmage against, a Utah State team here we're talking about. So I think that Notre Dame can provide a lot of power with their defensive line and blow these guys off the ball and blow up a lot of plays, really, because like I said, they want to pass the ball. They want to spread you out on offense. And that's kind of shown here on this 3-by-1 formation that I have kind of drawn up right now. They're spreading out a lot of their wide receivers. Right now we're on the right hash with one wide receiver into the boundary on the right, 3 wide receivers to the play side field. One of them's obviously going to be a tight end, but still they want to spread you out. They want to get, use the entire kind of sideline to sideline length of the field. They're not compact. They want to spread you out. And we talked about this too. I think you have to make them one-dimensional. If you can take away their passing game and make them run and make them throw the short passes underneath, that's really how you're going to beat them and how you're going to accomplish that, taking away their long ball, because that's what they want to do. They're not North Carolina. They're not looking for timing routes, 1, 2, 3 drop, get the ball out. A lot of initial reads. They want to throw it around 10 yards per pass. They want to get their big chunk plays. But for a defense like Notre Dame and the secondary success that they've had, I don't think that should really be an issue because they can disguise coverages. And I think cover 4 getting into a lot of cover four might be something that helps them. I'll show you why, because this is just a very, one of the many routes that BYU has shown. Obviously, I can't, draw up the the passing tree for all their different
Sure.
concepts because they run a lot of different plays. I know this guy right here says linebacker. I couldn't figure out how to switch him to a defensive back. That's a defensive back. So how they get into quarters coverage? You drop this DB straight back. I think I have the right. Yeah, you want to drop this guy straight back. Your other DB on the field side straight back. Your DB or your safety, boundary side will drop towards this area of the field, and then your last DB will drop straight back. The DB in the boundary will drop straight back, so you have a quarters look, and then you give your three guys here underneath kind of the ability to combo anything else that comes underneath. You're passing along, you're sitting in zones, you're sitting in holes, and I think that's ultimately what's going to get to this BYU offense, is because, like I said, they want to throw deep, and so how do you do that? You take away the deep ball. I think a lot of what we'll see is kind of similar to how NFL defenses have slowed down Patrick Mahomes a lot in the past, right? Like, we don't want to get beat with the deep ball. We want you to throw everything underneath. We want you to prove that your run game can work. So I think for the secondary that it would be very advantageous because, again, BYU is trying to accomplish downfield routes that take a little bit of time, deeper. You get into this quarters coverage, you take away some of these deeper shots, you force everything underneath. And then what you can do also is with this five-man kind of box, maybe six. What's hard is when teams split out three wide receivers like this, you put this linebacker in limbo. It's probably one of the hardest things, I think, to do because you're responsible to guard, this wide receiver, but then also sneak down here in the run game for anything that comes off of that. So it's a really in-between kind of player. But what's good here is you can do a lot of things of maybe, okay, we'll blitz this guy off the edge, and then this guy's kicking out this way. I just think if you're going to run kind of this quarters look or cover four, you have to do things to get pressure on the quarterback. You can't let him sit back there all day, especially when they're looking to let routes develop.
And I think for the most part, you talked about their offensive line. They did not play well, I didn't think, against Utah State. They haven't given up a ton of sacks, though, this year. I think it's only 7 sacks that they have allowed. But, again, like who they've played, I think, has factored into that as well. They play, they played Baylor and they played Oregon, a couple of good teams there. But, the rest of their, competition has been a little bit different. So I think that Notre Dame's defensive line should be able, to get a lot of pressure by themselves, but you obviously don't want to put it just on them. Bringing pressures and things like that are going to be important as well. And Chi-Town is asking if you're playing a lot of cover four, wouldn't you be giving up a lot of short passes in that situation?
Yeah, so that's obviously the what offensive coordinator adjustment would be if you see a lot of cover four. And I'm not saying stick to cover four predominantly. I think cover four provides a good look, but another good look is cover three, and that can be accomplished really doing the same thing. So say they start hitting some of those underneath plays, or they're getting kind of 3-4 yards a rush because they notice you're kind of dropping back deep. What is easily fixable with the defense that Notre Dame runs, instead of you have your two corners essentially take it in cover three, take the third, and then you have your free safety take the middle of the field, and then your strong safety can kind of walk down here a little bit, and what would create more of like a 4-3 look and add kind of another player underneath that would help in the run game if that became a problem. So I would expect a lot of in the beginning cover four, and then if things start to go bad, or you're getting kind of burned on those underneath routes or kind of quick screens or some quick hitting run plays, then you would see more of this strong safety kind of work his way down and work into more of a cover three look at that point. But I just think that BYU's offense largely relies on the big play, the 8, 9, 8, or I would say like 8 to 15 yard window in their routes. So if you can take away those and force more of a shorter game, I think BYU would be in for a long game.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So their leading receiver, Keanu Hill, 16 catches for 329 yards. So that's 20.6 per reception. He is number one, in case you didn't pick up his name in the broadcast last week. So he's averaging over 20 yards per catch, so that is big play when you're up there over, 18, per catch and above. So specifically with him, because it sounds like, again, maybe you're willing to give up some shorter stuff if the trade-off is you're not giving up 20 plus yard pass plays to a guy who's used to reeling in a lot of 20 plus yard passes.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what drives off of. They get themselves into kind of long down, situations and kind of have to rely on some of these longer passes. And I think Brent Smith made up a really good point, and kind of why I've been excited about Prince Collie is because I think that in a game like this, he's someone who could have a really good game, assuming that he's ready, because in that rover position, you're asked to basically, be a dual threat. Can you succeed in coverage, and cover downfield? A lot of, like we saw, like you see Micah Parsons do. He can cover a team's best receiver if he needs to, but at the same time, he's a force to be reckoned with, physical in the run game as well. So that's a situation where you'd like to see Prince Collie maybe in the future, because he's not quite ready today, talking because of, inexperience and that kind of things. But again, he would be perfect for that kind of position where you're rotating between cover 4 and cover 3, because he is so good in the pass. If you need him, athleticism, keeping up, good speed, but then also physical enough to help out in the run game if he needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, Keanu Hill, 16 catches, averaging over 20 yards per catch. But then you've got a guy, they've got 4 different receivers who are all like Cody Epps, 21 catches. He's only averaging 9.4 per reception. And this is a receiver. Their top 4 ball catchers are wide receivers. 9.4, that is, move the chains possession type receptions. He's not a get down field guy. But then, like you were talking about, they've got a couple of other guys, Braden Cosper and Chase Edwards, both around 15 catches, and they average basically between 13 and 15 yards per catch, more manageable type stuff. So, again, they'll their offense, like, to me, just watching some of the stuff North Carolina was doing prior to the game against Notre Dame. And again, it's against, I guess, lesser competition, but it's not like Utah State is, supposed to be, a whole lot better than what North Carolina was playing prior to Notre Dame. But their offense, good in spurts, but it did not seem overly consistent, what we saw last week against BYU, or against Utah State anyway. I think you're muted, Jess.
Sorry, Henry was barking there for a second, so I put myself on mute. But yeah, just kind of, what you were talking about. They struggled against a not very good Utah State team. Is that a credit of just not coming up, or playing above your competition's level, knowing that they're kind of not quite as good. But Utah State blew them off the ball, so it's like it wasn't just a matter of maybe some missed tackles or some poor reads or that kind of, like, it was physical effort in which they were getting blown off the ball. So I really to wrap this all up, I think if Notre Dame does exactly what they did against North Carolina, I think that they can score just as many points and give up even a less amount of points
than
what they did against North Carolina. So I really I don't see BYU as a huge threat as long as Notre Dame does kind of what they're supposed to and they build off of what they did against North Carolina.
I agree. I think that this should be a game that I think early in the season, well, I'll say after BYU beat Baylor, that definitely caught my attention. But then they turned around the next week and just got pushed around by Oregon. And like I said, Oregon ran the ball for 212 yards against them. So I see this as a game where Notre Dame could very well be up over that 200-yard rushing mark once again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I think the stat that jumped out to me the most is BYU's defense team, the opposing offense runs the ball 60% of the plays. That just doesn't happen by accident. Everyone kind of sees the same things and the flaws in BYU's defense. And it's not to say, BYU secondary is obviously the strength of their team, but Notre Dame can still do a lot, have some success against the secondary, but it largely is predicated by controlling the run game first. I think that's going to be the MO to Notre Dame's offense this year, is establishing the run game early, letting the pass game develop off of it, and then finishing teams off with that kind of power, eating up clock running style that Estime has towards the end of games.
Yep, I agree. All right, good stuff. You got anything else to add before we wrap this part up?
I wrote down in the beginning here, they are 3.5-point favorites. I think that they easily cover the 3.5. I think this is, I think you could bump that up to like 9.5 alternate spread. The 51.5 over under. I think that that's easily hit just off of, I think Notre Dame will give up maybe around 17 points. So then that leaves, the remaining 35 to be scored by the offense. I think that that's largely doable. I think it'll come down to that line. It'll just be a matter of if Notre Dame's offense puts up, a consistent amount of points. So I'll take the over for that. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about a little bit of the lines and where I saw those going.
All right. So you're in favor of Notre Dame in both cases then, really. You like that 3.5. I think I do too. And, again, wasn't really sure how I would feel about that, but after seeing more of BYU in detail, feel really good about that. Still, I mean, you make a good point that this should be a game where Notre Dame should be able to score some more. Again, they'll give up some points, but probably fewer than North Carolina. I would agree with that. So that 51.5 seems very realistic once again as well. So, yeah, okay. I can buy that. With all that said, Jess, are you ready for rapid fire?
It is the best way to end.
Let's do it. Okay, so fill in the blank on our first question tonight. What's one thing you need to see from Notre Dame coming out of this bye?
The one thing I need to see Notre Dame coming out of the bye is building off of what has worked.
I don't know what just happened to Jesse. I think that I thought I was getting rid of. Here he comes. He's coming back. Sorry about that. I think I removed you by mistake. I was trying to get rid of your diagram, and I think that I booted you out. So go ahead and start over again.
No worries. I thought that I messed it up, so I'm glad that it wasn't me. The one thing I need to see from Notre Dame coming out of the bye is continuous building off of prior success. I need to see them continue to take a step forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I need to see them, consistently doing the things that they know work. I don't think that there's any time to waste. There's no time to waste on running plays, experimental plays, or maybe, you're having a kind of agenda of certain things you want to get done. I want to see them build off of what they did well on these last 2 wins and get better at them and consistently, just establish this dominance in the run game early and often. So the number one thing I need to see is just growth, building growth, looking at the things that worked and saying, hey, these worked. And now how can we take it to the next level? I don't want to see them take steps back on things that have already proven to work for them.
Yeah. And, Marcus Freeman talked yesterday about run the ball. It sets everything up. And I think that that's true for this offense, especially the way they were able to deploy, the running backs and use a lot of the 2-back sets and all that different stuff. To me, kind of building off that, if you run the ball, it sets everything up. I've got to see the wide receivers actually be a factor in games going forward because the competition is going to get tougher down the stretch. Syracuse is not going to be a pushover. BYU is still a solid team. They're still better than Marshall, Clemson, USC, obviously. The wide receivers have got to become a factor. And now they showed that they could do something to an extent. We've got a lot of people talking about Tobias Merriweather still, and I don't blame you for that. But, the numbers of this wide receiver group, 29 receptions for 364 total yards by Irish wide receivers. And that is 4 wide receivers who have caught passes for Notre Dame this season. Lorenzo Styles, Braden Lindsey, Matt Salerno, Jaden Thomas. Those are the only 4. 29 catches between them, 364 yards. It accounts for just 40% of the team's total catches and 43% of the total receiving yards for the team today. Like, if you flip that and talk about the team that we were just talking about, BYU, 76 receptions for 1,060 yards. That's just for the wide receivers alone. That's not including tight ends and running backs for BYU. The BYU receivers, 76 catches, 1,060 yards. That represents 62% and 72% of the Cougars, receiving production through their 5 games. And so, like, if Notre Dame can even creep up closer to 50%, where the wide receivers are contributing to 50%, because you're talking about more receivers being on the field at any given time, yet their overall production, the guys you expect the ball to be going to, their overall production is less than the running backs and, of course, Michael Mayer right now. Now, as you brought up yesterday, and I agree with the fact that, Notre Dame's running backs have helped offset some of that with what they're able to do. I mean, that helps, but they have had to do that. The wide receivers have to step up and be an actual factor in game plans and offensive success on a week-to-week basis going forward. Salty said, easy on Marshall's defense. We owe them a Father's Day card. You're probably right about that. All right, Jess, if Notre Dame is in a situation where it must have a field goal late in the game, late game, crucial field goal coming up, what is the longest distance that you would feel extremely confident, like 8 or 9, maybe even out of 10, that Blake Groupie is going to hit that field goal in a clutch late game situation? What's the distance that you're looking at?
It's interesting because you look at Groupie and he's a graduate transfer, and he's set all of these scoring records in his time as an undergraduate, and so he has the experience. He should have the confidence. He's got a leg. He's made some important field goals before. It's just for some reason that hasn't translated while being at Notre Dame. So it's like, is it a pressure? Is it because of a product of, the pressure and the new environment and kind of having the expectations of, I'm now the kicker for a legit program.
Right.
And more of what happens can sway the game, in these kind of matchups. A missed extra point, a missed field goal, those can come back to really, haunt you in more of these big time games. So I think that's more of kind of where we're seeing him have some struggles with these kicks early on. I think when it comes down to it, though, he's got the leg. But where I would feel like real comfortable, I think I'd set it right at, long distance. I'd set it right at between 45 and 50. I don't think I could go anywhere over 50.
You would feel 8 out of 9, 45 to 50 yards.
I would feel good about
or 8 out of 10 even. You would feel that secure that he's going to hit in a clutch.
I think he's got the leg and he's got everything else. He just needs to see that first kind of big one go through in a big game, in a meaningful game. So anything under 50, I think I'm good with.
Yeah. Groupie is comfortable from PAT and in, says we are not Marshall, which piggybacking with Salty, he says 16 yards. I mean, that's, basically, let me see, 16, 10. You're not even kicking, you're kicking from like the 1 yard line, I think, in that situation. You basically, that is a PAT. I'm saying, because, I saw this, Groupie is solid from 45 and in. Solid, yes, but I'm not talking solid. I'm talking about this, like if it's he's got to have this field goal, got to have it. It's like you're trying to tie the game or you're trying to win the game late in the game. I'm not talking about he's solid. I'm talking about I am as close to 100%, that he's going to hit this field goal as possible. I'm only 100, I'm 100% from 35 yards. And I'm sorry, that's just what it is now. Just based on what we've seen from him so far, I am 100% from 35, if we get to to 40 yards, then even that extra 5 yards, I'm kind of in that 8-9 range. Anything more than that late in the game, maybe the ball needs to be on a different hash mark for him. I don't know, but that's about it right now. I've got to see him, as you said, he had a lot of success at Arkansas State, but Notre Dame and Arkansas State might as well be in different galaxies. They are in terms of college football. There's so much more on him and so much more pressure that comes with every kick when you're kicking for Notre Dame as opposed to Arkansas State. Maybe all it takes is one or two kicks to get him some confidence. Like one kick in a semi, pressure situation, like end of half even, to kind of give him some confidence, get him going. But I'm just not. It's hard, again, like he, seems like a good guy, but all the Andy Griffith fans out there, if you ever saw, Andy Griffith and Opie Taylor, like he reminds me of Opie, from the Andy Griffith show. He's just a small guy, from a small town and a small school, and you've stepped up to the big lights now. So it's not a personal knock on him. I've just got to see him do it because the couple of misses that he's had, and obviously one got over, Notre Dame got a second life because of that flag that shouldn't have been a flag and all that stuff, that he missed, but it ended up not missing. So that's as confident as I am right now, because it's just been shaky enough that it kind of scares me in a late game situation.
Yeah, it seems that I have just a little bit more confidence than you.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. All right, so BYU unveiled its Shamrock Series uniforms yesterday. They're going to be all black with blue stripes on the sleeves. So whose Shamrock uniforms do you like better? Notre Dame's all white or BYU's all black?
Oh, it's 100% Notre Dame's all white. I just kind of started looking at BYU's all black uniforms. They're kind of going with this. It kind of reminds me of Duke in what they're doing here. They have like the black uniforms, white numbers, and then a royal blue stripe down the pant leg, and then some royal blue stripes as well on the shoulder pads. And then their helmets are kind of like this black that fades into a royal blue, and then has two white stripes going down the side, and then the Y for BYU on the side. I personally am not a fan of mixing any sort of like blue and black. I don't mind the all black look. I think it looks good. I just would eliminate more of the blue. I think I would go kind of all black helmets, all black uniforms, white numbers, and if they wanted to use blue, kind of use it as a blue trimming or outline. But I think definitely that Notre Dame's are better. The all white is beautiful. And then using the gold to kind of accent it, it's going to be a really good look. I guess what I like the most is how these uniforms kind of match up in the game. You have basically monochrome all white and then monochrome kind of all black. So I think it'll look good going against each other.
Won't be hard to tell them apart.
Yeah, and it's easier on the eyes. It's very nice. There's a distinct difference between who is who out there.
The colorblind won't have a problem watching this game. Not at all. Not like, I think it was Buffalo and the Jets a few years back. You had red and green, and I remember, I'm not colorblind, but I remember them saying, like people who were colorblind couldn't tell the teams apart. I'm not a monochrome fan by any means, but if it's going to be monochrome, I would rather have white than a dark monochrome. I'd like to see in Notre Dame, they've got kind of the gold squigglies and some of that kind of stuff. And as a broadcaster sitting up in the booth, the lighter gold numbers, at least they've got some dark trim around the numbers to kind of offset it a little bit. But just the look itself, I definitely like the all white with the gold look compared to the all black with the blue stripes. And I actually was like, when I was watching that BYU Utah State game last week, like the blue that BYU was using in those uniforms, I actually liked, because they've kind of had more of a navy look, and that was more of a royal look that they were wearing in that game. And then they saw that, that they unveiled their own Shamrock Series uniform. So I like the all white. I think all white is a nice, clean look. again, maybe, some different accents Notre Dame could have had, but like if I'm just looking at the base uniforms, I definitely like the gold on white compared to the all black with, the blue stripes and this stuff like that BYU is going with. All right, I was looking here and I just saw, some people were still kind of commenting on some of the kicking and stuff like that. So we talked a little bit yesterday, Jesse, about the current Power 5 job openings, the ones that are open now. You've got 5 Power 5 jobs open. Nebraska, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Colorado, Georgia Tech. Well, Deion Sanders is 15-2 currently over the past 2 years at Jackson State. And that includes a 4-0 record this year after going 11-2 last year. And he is kind of becoming someone whose name, is starting to circulate a little bit more because of that success that he's having at Jackson State. So if you're looking at Deion, do any of those 5 jobs, are any of them maybe a better fit for him, do you think? Like if he was going to move up to one of these jobs?
I in previous conversations about both of these, we've talked about Deion Sanders as a coach, and we've talked about these Power 5 openings. I don't see Deion as being a guy who necessarily needs that Power 5 stage or necessarily kind of wants to be a part of that at this point in his career. That's just my opinion, whatever. But of those schools, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Colorado, Georgia Tech, I think that Deion Sanders would have the best fit. And Arizona State, I think that kind of plays into a lot of things that we talked about, the last couple of days of Arizona State having, good weather that's attractive to recruits. Arizona State being a school that's known for, having a good time, that's attractive to recruits. Being able to have made probably less academic regulations compared to Georgia Tech, Nebraska, Wisconsin. So you can get more JUCOs, transferred in. You can be more lenient with some of these recruits. I think Arizona is a good recruiting grounds. I think the Pac-12 has shown weakness where it seems like every year a new kind of leader emerges in the Pac-12. So for those reasons, I think his lifestyle also plays into it as well. I just think that Arizona State would be the best fit for Deion Sanders if that was a decision that he was looking to make.
I agree as well. And like when you look at academics, we've talked about the Arizona State job. I wouldn't say quite a bit, but every time that we've kind of, brought up these different openings and stuff like that, the Arizona State job is desirable for a lot of reasons. The weather, of course, being one of them, your proximity to Los Angeles, and Deion Sanders, because of the fact that your academic standards at Arizona State are not going to be probably what they are at least most of those other schools. I think that makes a very good fit. It's easier to recruit to, and with a guy like Deion Sanders, I think you can pull in a lot of recruits at a place like that. We Are Not Marshall says Deion waiting for that Auburn job, and I mean
that's good point.
Could be a very good point. Where they are right now. I think his dream job is that Florida State job, and I think that's why he was willing to go where he went to Jackson State, to prove that he actually could coach, to maybe one day have a chance at that Florida State job. And maybe down the line, that is still what he's eyeing. But, Florida State lost for the first time last week after their own 4-0 start. I assume, I guess you don't want to assume too much because things can still change in a hurry, but that job, at least for now, seems to be on stable footing, for at least this year. So I don't think that's probably going to be a possibility for Deion. That Auburn job is, that's one that's probably going to come open sooner than later. But of the ones that are open right now, I think Arizona State is definitely, the big one. Now Brian says Georgia Tech would be nice for Deion. And I think we
hard school to get into.
That's the thing, because the recruiting area is awesome. Obviously, they're like the state of Georgia itself for recruiting. I think Deion would do really well there. But I think that the fact that again, because of the academics being higher at a place like Georgia Tech, especially if you're going to compare it, comparing Georgia Tech to a place like Arizona State, like we were just talking about, I think that that would make it a lot tougher. And you kind of wonder if maybe, that's where Georgia Tech is right now. And the fact that, they went so long, with that triple option offense and all that. Tyler Evans says, do you think Wisconsin already has their guy in Jim Leonhard? And it kind of sounds like with the Wisconsin job, like what do they have? 7 games, I think, left now at this point. Like this is an audition for Jim Leonhard, just kind of based on some of the stuff that I've already seen already, that like Jim Leonhard probably does have a realistic shot at getting the job, if they play well down the stretch. And if it's not Jim Leonhard, it pains me to say this, it's probably going to be Lance Leopold, assuming that he is interested in it. But Leopold, is a, the Kansas head coach, is a Wisconsin native. He won all the Division III championships at Whitewater there in Wisconsin. So like it seems like a perfect fit. And he has actually coached at Wisconsin before as well. So like if I were betting right now on who's going to get the Wisconsin job, it would be one of those two, either Jim Leonhard, defensive coach who's taken over as the interim coach, or Lance Leopold, the current Kansas head coach after their 5-0 start. That would be my guess.
Side note, when We Are Not Marshall brought up Deion to Auburn, I thought I'd have to give a phone call to my good friend Alan Green at the University of Auburn. But I just came into the news that he is no longer the athletic director at Auburn.
Yeah, you're a few weeks behind on that.
Yeah,
you're a few weeks behind on that. Yeah, that's right.
So I can't pull the favor for, my good friend Deion and talk to my good friend Alan Green down at the University of Auburn.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Okay, Jess, I've heard Russell Wilson referred to by multiple TV announcers as a Hall of Famer. So do you buy or sell Russell Wilson as a Hall of Famer? You buy the moniker?
This is tough. I went into a deep dive of Russell Wilson because I myself am not a Russell Wilson fan. So I wanted to put away all biasy, and I started, kind of looking at the Russell Wilson resume. The first thing that sticks out to me is he has never been a all-pro player. He's only made the Pro Bowl, I think 8 or 9 times is what sounds right.
Never been an MVP.
He has never been an MVP. And so, yeah, he's only made, the Pro Bowl, which is still a good feat, but not quite as high, obviously, as MVP or being, a first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro, etc. And so I started to then look at, where his all-time numbers kind of, stack up against everyone else. I guess I shouldn't, I would be failing to mention that he is a Super Bowl champion, a one-time Super Bowl champion. But like I said, I started looking at, his career numbers. Right now, he's 24th in passing at about 38,000 passing yards. Just for comparison, Tom Brady is number 1 at about 86,000 passing yards. Some notable people on that list is Matt Stafford. He's at 12th right now at about 51,000. Carson Palmer is at 46,000 at about 15th right now. Joe Flacco, actually 42,000, is 19th. So there's a decent amount of people, ahead of him all time in the passing yards, but still 24th overall is, really good. There's been a lot of quarterbacks, obviously. So then I started to go look at how many touchdown passes has Russell Wilson thrown. He's currently at about 300 all time. John Elway is at 300 at number 13. Russell Wilson is at 296 and 14th overall. Just for comparison, again, Tom Brady has about double that number, and he leads right now at 630. Peyton Manning ended up with 539. Again, Russell Wilson's at around 300 right now. So, 14th overall, not bad, but he's starting to get into the big boy territory, right? And so I think he's above average, but he's not elite. He's not like, the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady, the Drew Brees, at least in my opinion. And you have to take into account that he's playing in a very pass heavy, era. That also helps his stats and, maybe compared to some of the all-time quarterbacks that didn't get to, rack up the passing stats. Long story short, never won MVP, one-time Super Bowl champion, never been all-pro. His numbers are kind of, they're good, they're above average. And I think that's just about what Russell Wilson is. I don't think he's quite elite or great, but he's definitely above average, on the cusp of being elite. But I just don't think I can consider him a Hall of Fame quarterback with, what he's accomplished in his career. I think I would need to see more of, maybe an MVP in there, maybe another Super Bowl, those kind of accolades. But where we stand today, does he have impressive numbers? Yes, but I just don't think it's quite Hall of Fame level. And you can't just throw around the Hall of Fame tag to anyone, because then it becomes less of a prestigious thing.
Right. We are not Marshall asked best receiver Wilson's played with. Probably prior to DK Metcalf, it was Golden Tate. I think those are probably the top two guys. I saw Chi-Town said Bobby Ingram, but I would put DK Metcalf ahead of either one of those guys, basically based on the short career that DK Metcalf has had. The stat that stands out to me for Russell Wilson, and you just went through a lot, but the one
Doug
that I
Baldwin
think
is the wide receiver I was thinking of.
Doug Baldwin. Okay.
Sorry.
I think the number that jumps out to me in his favor is the touchdown to interception ratio, because he has 296 career touchdowns, just 88 interceptions. That's 3.3 to 1. That is an insane number. I mean, that is a legit number right there. And the fact that he passes for over 3,700 on average, 3,700 yards per season, which is kind of deceptive as well, because when I think of the way that offense has, ran when he was up there in Seattle with Pete Carroll, it was, I think of it more as a power running offense and not a big passing offense, so maybe that kind of takes away from him. But now the other thing that he has in his favor is winning the Super Bowl. But there are a lot of one-time Super Bowl winners. Joe Theismann, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, Jeff Hostetler, Jim McMahon, guys like that. And like Joe Theismann is probably the most notable of the one-time Super Bowl winners not in the Hall of Fame. And like you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, when I looked this up today, I could not believe it. 160 touchdown passes, 138 interceptions in his NFL career. I mean, I would not have ever thought, watching Joe Theismann play in his prime, that he threw that many interceptions, especially, he doesn't even have a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And he threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns in his 3 years in the Canadian Football League as well. And then like you look at a guy like Jim Plunkett, who won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders, he's not in the Hall of Fame. So I think, I agree with some of the comments that we're seeing and what you're saying. Yeah, Ken Stabler, a one-time winner as well. Thank you very much there, Stymie. So, I think that there are a lot of one-time Super Bowl winners. That should not be enough. And the fact that Russell Wilson, now granted, there have been a lot of really good, basically 2 really good quarterbacks ahead of him that have prevented him from winning MVPs, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are going to the Hall of Fame. But, I agree. I think that Russell Wilson has been really good, but where he is in his career right now, especially with the way things have started in Denver, they expected him to be able to carry that team. He has not carried anything so far. I think it's way too soon to be saying Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer, to just throw that out for a guy who's never even won an MVP, because the biggest credential that he has is that Super Bowl. But again, there are a lot of one-time Super Bowl winners who are never going to sniff the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think 2 important things to kind of wrap up this question is, one, he might be more known for the Super Bowl he didn't win and the interception he threw on the goal line, and I know that that's not his fault and he can't control the play call, but he still threw the interception and still lost that Super Bowl with that interception. So I think that largely hangs over his head. And I think honestly, if Russell Wilson wants to get into the Hall of Fame, it'll be largely predicated by what he does in this last window with the Broncos. I think if he can go out and somehow, have a consistent 3-4 years, 5 years, the kind of the contract they gave him and the money they gave him, and he can win a Super Bowl and consistently, I say win another Super Bowl and can add on to those stats, he might have a strong chance. But right now, today, I just don't see it quite yet.
Yeah. All right. We've had 4 weeks of the NFL season, which means 4 weeks of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman in the Monday Night Football booth. And 3 of those weeks, including last night, were Manning Cast nights. We've had the Manning Casts as well. So, my question to you, Jess, have you watched more or less of the Mannings this year compared to last year when you think about the fact that now you've got Buck and Aikman in the main booth?
I have actually listened to about the same as what I did last year. I was a fan of the Manning cast. And the only time I didn't watch the Manning cast is when my team, the Dallas Cowboys, were playing. So when they played, what was that, like a week ago, I did not watch the Manning cast. But every other game, I have watched the Manning cast, and it's not a it's not against it could be whoever. It's nothing against Buck or Aikman. I like Buck and Aikman. I just enjoy the Manning cast. I like that the fact that they bring on guests. And I also enjoy, the things that you learn. I know it kind of sounds corny and they might be a little bit boring, but listening to someone like Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, talk through kind of coverages and what they are expecting based off of, pre-snap formations and those sort of things. Those are the things that make me excited as a football fan. And I realize that that's not necessarily what Aikman and Buck are getting paid to do. Their style is more of obviously, kind of traditional broadcasting, but I do flip. Sometimes the Mannings do get boring, and so I'll flip over to the main feed. But I'd say where I'm at predominantly, I like the Manning cast. The only way I'm not watching them like 100% again is if my team is playing, because I like to know what's going on in the game. Hearing the referees, talk about maybe some injuries or that kind of stuff. But overall, I'm into the Mannings. I enjoy it.
I watched a lot more Manning Cast last year when the Monday night booth was what it was. And we don't have to bash on them. They did their best. They're a professional crew and all that. But it's not Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. And like getting to watch Fox games for the last, 20 years or whatever, that, or roughly 20 years that Buck and Aikman were together on Fox, like them moving into the booth, there's definitely a different feel. Like it feels more like big game on Monday Night Football again. After growing up, with Cosell and all those guys in the Monday Night booth, Frank Gifford, and then and just as that Dandy Don Meredith, all those guys, like the original Monday Night Cruise and what it became, the bigness of Monday Night Football and what it basically sank to, for basically probably the last 20 or so years. Like getting Buck and Aikman, I have watched, much more of the main feed this year, more Monday Night Football in general in games that my team, team has not played in. Obviously, they've only played in one so far. And it's not that I don't like the Mannings. It's just that I watched more of the Mannings last year because it was a nice kind of change of pace. And, you got to hear some different insights and stuff like that. I did watch more of it last night just because kind of I was thinking that we were probably going to talk about this. I will say they definitely had some fun last night with the idiot who came out on the field.
That. Yeah, I understand that we could. No, they don't want to talk about it. I understand the A team couldn't show up, but the B team, we should be able to show that.
I think that's what. Here you go. Oh, yeah.
There he is. There he is.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. That's what we're talking about. Wagner, a veteran, right? Get him down. Now get out and let these guys take over.
Oh,
Bobby Wagner, veteran play.
He had some smoke going on there.
Yeah, he's got a T-shirt on. I mean, he's promoting something.
Amateur hour there. If you're gonna streak, you got to go full throttle and go nude, right? I mean, what is this?
He is not going to.
I like that from Eli there at the end. You got to go full throttle. It's amateur hour. If you're gonna streak, you gotta go for it. I thought that was definitely some fun with Bobby Wagner coming out there and leveling the pink smoke guy that came out on the field. That again, you didn't get to see on the main feed, but they showed it on the Manning cast. So there's a Manning cast benefit, I guess. But I haven't watched as much of the Manning cast, but they're definitely still having fun.
I just got to say, Bobby Wagner leveled that guy. I think that whoever that guy was is largely considering all of his decisions, because not only did he have to probably sit in the night in jail, but he got leveled by Bobby Wagner. Like that was,
yes,
a big time hit. And I thought that it was funny too. It's like such a pro move. Just get the guy down. You know, you can catch him. You're an NFL linebacker. And then you just let the, the security do the job after that.
Now that was audio only. That, of course, was not video. That was a still photo, like you would see, like if ESPN was showing Olympic stuff. It was a still photo with the audio courtesy of ESPN2. So I think technically, we stayed within our boundaries there because we did not show any video. That was audio only from the broadcast last night, courtesy of ESPN2. All right, so ESPN is expected to have a direct-to-consumer streaming service within the next 2 years. And, of course, not everyone, but you're seeing more cord cutting, a lot more streaming. I think you're mostly a streaming guy where you are. So with this new service, it would be like the ESPN channel. You would get all of the ESPN programming without having to subscribe to a cable or satellite TV provider. So my question, Jess, how much would you be willing to pay per month to have that from ESPN, the ESPN streaming app? So you've got the full channel of ESPN streaming.
I guess, first of all, we shouldn't be surprised because everyone's now just going to package up, their services and call it a streaming service. And
yep.
It was all fun and dandy until everyone kind of had to monopolize or make some money off the situation. So unfortunately, this is the path we're seeing it go. In terms of how much I would pay for an all ESPN package, I pay right now $15 a month for Netflix. Somewhere around there, between 12
is
and
it
15
that much for Netflix?
Yeah, it's cranked up. Lucky for you, you're on.
I wouldn't know because I share an account.
Yeah, you just take mine. That's funny. But I knowing what that price is, I think I'd set my bar for knowing how much sports I watch and what comes along with it and all the 30 for 30s and there's a ton of stuff that's going to come with it. I think I'd set my price at like $10 a month. I think that's where I'd feel the most comfortable. Anything over that, I'd start to feel uncomfortable. I would love for it to stay out of double digits, but I think the double digit number I'd be okay with is $10. Much more than that, you got to look at, Netflix, like I said, is like $15, but they're providing a lot more. You have TV shows, movies, a lot of, current stuff, and then obviously older stuff. So I'm going $10.
Yeah. And that's the problem with all this, like the cord cutting is you get into what we're getting into now. So now everyone's got their streaming service. And if you want to watch all the stuff that you want to watch, then you end up paying for all these streaming services. And by the time it's all said and done, aren't you paying almost as much as you would be paying per month if you were, just stayed on cable to begin with?
Exactly.
And that's, I'm like and the big thing is for sports fans because, and like as someone, who has to follow all this stuff for your job, like I need ESP or I need NBC and I need ESPN and I need CBS and I need Fox and sometimes I need FS1 and I need the ACC network and so I need all these different things. So like for me and for like any like sports fans who really want to watch all their sports, I don't know that there's that much benefit to just having an ESPN app. So like you said $10, I was expecting you to see to kind of go even closer to 15 or $20 since you're already, again, splitting it up. The problem is, like sometimes your game isn't even on ESPN. It's on ESPN2. And so then are you just back on ESPN Plus? Because I don't know about you, like when it's on ESPN Plus, I've tried the, like the adapter into my TV. Is it just me or does ESPN Plus not work on your, like, do they not want you to watch it through an adapter on your TV? Have you ever tried that?
No, I haven't tried. I've just more so like this past weekend where I was using the Sunday ticket. I just pull it up on my phone and then just airplayed it to my TV. I didn't have to worry about.
See, and then Tyler brings up a great point because I do have Sunday ticket. And here's my biggest concern with the Sunday ticket, like because it's going to be on a streaming service next year. It's probably either going to be on Amazon or on Apple. And here's my biggest question, because like right now, if I have things going on Sunday afternoon and I want to record the Cowboys game, which I do from time to time, and then come back and want to watch it after the fact, I can power through a Cowboys game or any NFL game that I record in an hour. But if the Sunday ticket is going to a streaming platform, what's my ability going to be? Like, am I still going to have to, one, is it going to record? Am I going to be able to go back and watch it after the fact at all? Because I don't know if you can do that, like with the Amazon, these Thursday night games, I haven't really, looked or tried to go back and watch any of them. Maybe I can see if they've got them on archive, but can I go back and watch them after the fact? And if I do I have to sit through the full commercial? So I'm committed to 3 to 3.5 hours to get through it.
I think the people need to know how much you despise commercials.
Well, if I'm watching it after the fact, don't you want to get through the commercials so that you're not, because again, if you can fast forward through commercials in halftime, you can get through a football game literally in an hour, as opposed to watching in live time with all the commercials. You can forward through the downtime between plays and all that different stuff. So there's a big difference. And Tyler was saying Amazon Prime. I think I assume you're talking about where the Sunday ticket is going to be. It hasn't been decided yet. It's most likely between Amazon and Apple from all the stuff that I've heard right now. It has not, they don't have a definite home for it yet, but most likely it's going to be on a streamer next year. But there are a lot of questions. And again, like for this ESPN thing, $10 is probably my max. But again, like for my needs, I'm probably never going to get, a one-off streaming app just because I need all those other channels to watch sports.
Yeah, unfortunately for someone like you, if they said 20, 20 would be coming out of the pocket.
Well, and I saw here it was. Nick said he does the Hulu Live for $60 a month. Is that what you do? Are you on the Hulu Live?
Yeah, I have Hulu Live.
And is that what you pay, like $60 a month?
Yep, right around there.
Yeah, see, that's $60, and then your other streaming services. I don't know. I get. What do you get with Hulu Live? Like, are you getting your networks and all that kind of stuff through that?
It's not like, it's not. It's probably like 100 live channels, opposed to Direct TV and all that stuff. But all I know is on college, like when college games are on Saturdays, like I can find almost every college game there is. I have no issues. There's tons of live sports. I would say the only downside is like when there's nothing on, there's not like endless channels to just go scroll through. It's a very set, like I said, like 100 channels maybe, not many, but it's known for the live sports. Basketball is on, football is on, baseball is on. It has a lot of avenues to watch a lot of different live sports.
All right. Chi-Town says Prime gives you the ability to rewatch games and fast forward to any point. So that's good information. Thank you, Irish Chi-Town. I do have the Prime app, so I'll have to go back and see if maybe they've still got like last week's Thursday night game and the ability to kind of go through that. But that's my biggest concern. Again, having the Sunday ticket and being able to record games, even if they're not on the ticket, even if it's a regular channel, to record games and be able to get back through commercials and all that kind of stuff. All right, Jess. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. I know, like you said, you're off for the next few days, so enjoy your time off. The Dean, Vince DiDario, will be in the next couple of days, so looking forward to talking to you later. Great Chalk Talk stuff that we had earlier tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like closing thoughts, I think Notre Dame should have no issue with this game, assuming that they do the things that they did well against North Carolina. I don't think BYU is going to throw anything crazy at them. And yeah, I would just like to see another solid performance and obviously another impressive victory. I think they can get back on that path to potentially being ranked again and still getting to some some of their goals and competing well against Clemson and USC. I think that they can win both of those games. It's like I said, they just start kind of building towards being better and getting better at the things that they know that they're good at. And that's what I want to see against BYU. They're a solid team, and I'd like to see them beat them doing the things that they know that they can do well.
Yep, absolutely. Concur. All right. Great stuff. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us tonight. Remember to hit that like button on your way out. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review, comment, whatever you do, just do it. It helps out Irish Breakdown greatly. We will talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.
Peace.